Mick Foley and Terry Funk. Boom. 10 out of 10, great pitch, I'm sold.
But wait! There's more!
We got Edge in peak rated R superstar scumbag mode, along with Lita, with hair as red as the heat that she has with the audience, and Tommy Dreamer's there too. Hello and welcome to Black Crush. This is In Case You Missed It, a show where I talk about matches that I find cool. Maybe you're a new fan who just hasn't got around to watching every single match from every single promotion since the Goldust Trio. Maybe you're a long-time fan and some of these matches might have slipped through the cracks. Or maybe you're like me and you've seen it but need something to fall asleep to, so go looking for podcasts and videos about stuff you're already familiar enough with that it won't hold your attention too much, but a new take on it's interesting enough to stop your mind from wandering too far down the abyss. Just me? Well, anyway, I figured this was a better name than top most ever crazy match ever you've never seen in your life. Yeah, you, specifically you piece of fuck. So let's set the scene. WWE has essentially monopolised mainstream wrestling in most of the world, having bought out the only real competition for over a decade in WCW, along with ECW too. The weird little grungy promotion that somehow managed to make stars out of guys most wrestlers considered glorified backyarders, as well as being a creative rehabilitation centre, or in some cases the first big-ish break for what would become some of the industry's biggest stars ever. People such as Eddie Guerrero, Dusty Rhodes, Rey Mysterio, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and one of the competitors in the match we're talking about today, Mick Foley. Some people may wonder why it took WWE 5 years to run an ECW show. I mean, they infamously gave WCW time slots on their own shows in the lead up to the invasion. Was that Buff Bagwell and Booker T match so bad that it killed the potential for two companies? Well, not exactly. Side note, that match wasn't as bad as people make it out to be, and WWE totally screwed them over by not delaying the match by just 1 week when they were in full-blown WCW home country goddamn Atlanta, Georgia. Back to the point. Even if WWE wanted to book an ECW show, they couldn't. And I'm going to let you in on a little known secret that will explain why. Paul Heyman is a con man. Shocking, I know, but yes, I think if you look online, you might find one or two stories that back that up. So, remember when I said WWE bought over ECW too? Well, that wasn't as complete of a sale as Paul may have led Vince to believe. A huge part of the reason for calling the ECW and the WCW team the Alliance, and for a short period before that, the Coalition, is because Paul didn't actually own all of the IP he suggested, and as a result, WWE didn't have full clearance to use the ECW name on their shows and branding. Thankfully for hardcore enthusiasts and newcomers alike, that was all cleared up in 2003, just in time for an ECW documentary called The Rise and Fall of ECW. A semi-revisionist, semi-true, but fully entertaining look back at the whirlwind that was ECW. The DVD sales? Yes, remember those? Lost media is becoming a thing, so if you see a bargain, get it. Thank me in a few years when your favourite movies aren't available on any streaming platforms because all of media is owned by 3 parent companies. It's a lot of tangents. The DVD sales were better than expected. In fact, they were better than expected. The Rise and Fall of ECW sold hundreds of thousands of copies and was one of WWE's most successful releases ever. An unauthorized companion piece titled Forever Hardcore was also released in the follow-up and included a bunch of ECW personalities that didn't appear in WWE's documentary, and it was written, produced and directed by none other than Jeremy Borash.
Jeremy Borash.
The response to the DVD was so overwhelmingly positive that Rob Van Dam used this as the last bit of motivation he needed to pitch a one-off ECW special. A way to honour the legacy of the extreme promotion that arguably fueled WWE's most prolific phase in the Attitude Era, and also give the promotion the farewell it deserved but never had. Vince McMahon was so touched by Rob's passion and emotion that Vince saw money and liked money, so approved the idea that he saw as a fairly safe bet to make money. And make money it did. ECW One Night Stand was officially announced for June 2005. But in a cruel twist of fate, Rob would be injured and unable to perform at the show, instead settling for a work shoot promo segment. But even without the whole effing show on the last effing show, it would sell over 325,000 pay-per-view buys, as well as crashing WWE's website from an unexpected amount of traffic trying to buy the show. The farewell show went so well in fact that WWE said farewell to the idea of the farewell and decided the ECW fruit had enough juice left in it to squeeze out a whole relaunch. And with that, plans were in place to kick things off with a second ECW One Night Stand. WWE really don't understand the number one, do they? Like, once in a lifetime? Just like the show the year before, 2006's edition of One Night Stand took place in the Hammerstein Ballroom, and the build-up leaned fairly heavily on an ECW versus WWE angle. And although the 2005 edition had members of the Raw and SmackDown roster supposedly invade the show by watching relatively peacefully from the balcony for 90% of the event, the 2006 edition had a much more WWE heavy feel on the card itself. While the inaugural One Night Stand had WWE contracted wrestlers on the card, every match still consisted of ECW alumni. The 2006 edition, not so much. Partially because some of the roster were signed elsewhere, most notably Rhino being signed to TNA and burning the ECW Heavyweight Championship during a shoot promo. Well, burned a bag that allegedly had the title in it because they weren't allowed to show the title or the logo on the screen, and apparently didn't really burn it anyway. But more so, this show was being used as a launchpad for a whole new brand, and in typical Vince fashion, he needed to make sure his mark was on it before he put it on his show. The first match, if you could even call it a match, had Taz choking out Jerry Lawler in around 30 seconds, followed by Kurt Angle versus Randy Orton. If this didn't give you warning signs that ECW as you know it was dead already, I don't know what to tell you. Now to be fair, this was ECW's Kurt Angle beating the dog shit out of a WWE Golden Boy. You know, ECW's Kurt Angle, just like Stone Cold Steve Austin was famously a WCW guy in Invasion. Right? Things get a little bit more back to ECW basics with the third match of the night. The FBI, Little Guido and Tony Mamaluke, with Big Guido, taking on Yoshihiro Tajiri and Super Crazy, followed up by what on paper sounds like another ECW dream match, Sabu versus Rey Mysterio, although this was arguably the most WWE booked match on the show, thanks to the finish. I've always actually felt quite bad for Rey in this case. He even made the extra effort to switch up his gear and go with a bit of a throwback style to the kind of stuff he wore during his ECW time. But his best efforts aside, this one was always destined to be a disappointment from the get-go. See, a small detail I forgot to mention was that this match was actually for Rey's SmackDown World Heavyweight Championship. And that should have been a pretty cool moment. It's a WCW title on an ECW pay-per-view run by the WWE, kind of. Now, I don't know about you, but anyone who thought that Sabu was walking away with the World Heavyweight Championship under Vince's umbrella must be watching their first ever wrestling match. And that's before we even address the fact that Rey was still in full-blown Eddie Guerrero avatar mode. All of that said, that's not even the worst part. The match ended in a no contest from an admittedly awesome looking DDT through a table to the floor. Now, I know that a move this crazy should absolutely be enough of a risk to call for a double count out or a no contest or whatever. But this is ECW. This is Sabu. The guy who's more scar than person. The guy who sliced open his bicep and duct taped it together to finish the match. The guy who's introduced to the ring as being homicidal, suicidal, genocidal and death-defying. Being told by a medic he can't continue and needing medical attention to end the match. Like I said, ECW as you know it is long dead. And that's not just me saying it. Not to quote Becky Lynch, but you'll see when we get to the match we're here for, this crowd were not going to take that shit. The remaining other matches in the card were Balls Mahoney versus Masato Tanaka, another match more in keeping with the original ECW, but one that had no chance whatsoever of even coming close to the amazing match Tanaka had with Mike Awesome in the previous year's event. And in the main event, which saw Rob Van Dam announcing ahead of time that he would be cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase to challenge John Cena for the WWE Championship. But before that, it's time to get to the match that we're here for. Mick Foley and Edge versus Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer. The build to this match in a weird way actually started at WrestleMania with the awesome Edge and Foley hardcore match. Foley would end up being a guest on Edge's talk show segment, The Cutting Edge, a month after WrestleMania, where they would set up a rematch on the following week's episode of Raw. Although just before the match started, Foley would then announce it would become a triple threat match, cueing the introduction of Tommy Dreamer. All signs pointed to Edge's early demise until Mick Foley unexpectedly turned on Tommy Dreamer, making him a heel for the first time in almost a decade. Edge and Foley teamed up to attack Tommy and beat him down so badly he couldn't attend the following Raw. On that show, Foley showed remorse for his actions and stated he wanted to apologise to Tommy, but knowing he wasn't in the building, he brought out Terry Funk to accept the apology on Tommy's behalf. Of course, This wasn't a sincere apology, as Foley instead started running down Tommy in ECW, which led to another double team by Edge and Foley, who would later on be crowned as the co-hardcore champions by the Mixer himself. Weirdly, this whole match hinged as much on Foley claiming that him and Edge had the greatest hardcore match of all time, not any ECW match, as much as it leaned on the word whore. You see, Mick said that ECW was the whore ex-girlfriend that he needed to exorcise from his past, but Paul Heyman accused Foley of being a whore who prostituted his legacy and the name of hardcore to make a quick buck, something Heyman would never do, of course. Foley then embraced that and stated that the only difference between himself and Tommy Dreamer was that Foley had the bravery to become a whore and make it in the WWE, and then of course Terry Funk had to call someone a whore, so unfortunately for Mick's wife, she was the target.
Hey Foley! Hey Foley! Your wife's a whore!
Your mother's a whore!
Oh, and don't worry, Lita would get called that and much worse by the ECW audience, but we'll get there. The first entrant to the match in question was Mick Foley, dressed in his iconic Cactus Jack shirt and red flannel. He would cut a promo where he started by responding to the "You sold out" chants by admitting, alright, I did sell out. I sold out Madison Square Garden. He then very sincerely apologised to the ECW fans and paid tribute to a time when he loved and respected the Extreme promotion, back when it was run by a true visionary and a creative genius.
Let's hear it for Stephanie McMahon!
He followed this up with a weak attempt to get a "Long Live the Alliance" chant started, and then introduced his tag partner and his tag partner's partner, Edge and Lita, who had dudes literally reaching out and caressing her arms. What the fuck is wrong with people? Edge and Lita then cut promos of their own, talking about how the crowd would text their imaginary girlfriends before having some happy fun special one-player time while looking at photos of Lita. Why does that even work? Text an imaginary girlfriend? Like, do they have a second phone with a number, or do they just text the app and don't press send? Lita would then run down Tommy Dreamer, in her words the innovator of silence, which is a great line, while alluding to a skank that he hung around. Oh, and from the second Lita opened her mouth, the crowd did their best to absolutely obliterate her with horrific chant after horrific chant. Third promo in a row done, we finally get the other side of this match. Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer, and a surprise appearance from Beulah McGillicutty. For anyone familiar with Beulah, she was initially introduced in a manager-valet role as an ex-schoolmate of Tommy's, who she fell in love with. Tommy then rejected her though because of her weight, and she was now in ECW to side with Raven and make Tommy pay. She would then go on to be treated like most women in wrestling were at the time, being eye candy at best and TNA at worst, but occasionally she got the chance to show that she was more capable than most might assume, busting out moonsaults, taking nasty weapon spots, pile drivers, and by having what most refer to as the bloodiest match in ECW history with Bill Alfonso, a match that essentially was a punishment for Bill allegedly helping negotiate WCW contracts for ECW talent behind Paul's back, and after supposedly losing a third of the blood in his body, Paul found it in his heart not to fire the guy. Once the other team get in the ring, Beulah grabs the mic and drops a great line on Lita saying,
"We all know how much you like threesomes, so why don't we make it official? Let's make it 3-on-3.
And with that, we're off. Beulah and Lita try to start things off but get separated by the men, who then officially begin the match with Tommy briefly out wrestling Edge, only for Edge to quickly tag out to Foley, who immediately calls Terry into the ring instead. Tommy kindly obliges and gives Terry the tag, who then comes in, slaps Mick around so bad that it causes Mick to tell Edge,
That's a good idea. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here.
before trying to leave. Funk immediately puts an end to that shit, and all four men start brawling outside the ring. Funk's throwing chairs that end up hitting the front row, Dreamer's using road signs, bacon sheets, and bins to dole out unprotected headshots. Just as a extra quick clarification of how different the times were back then, by this point Foley alone has already taken multiple shots to the head with a sign, a chair, a gross headbutt from Terry Funk, a bin drop kicked into his head which then forced him to fall out to the floor off the apron, only to have that same bin thrown at his face, and the match is barely a couple of minutes in. How that man is in as good mental shape as he is today is beyond me, especially considering how some of the other guys have turned out. Foley and Funk continue to throw stiff shots at each other's faces and skulls all around the ring, while Edge has an attempted spear through a ladder reversed by Dreamer with a hip toss, only for Funk to soon after place that same ladder around his neck and do his famous helicopter spot. He then climbs the damn ladder to attempt a moonsault at 60-something years old, only to have Edge push the ladder over, causing Funk to fall all the way to the opposite corner of the ring with the ladder landing on top of him. Lita then makes her first impact in the match by saving Edge from the Death Valley Driver by kicking Dreamer in his Tommies, only to have Edge and Foley double suplex a barbed wire board on top of him. Yeah, they don't suplex Tommy into the barbed wire board, they suplex the barbed wire board onto Tommy. They try to go for it again, but Funk reverses it by sweeping their legs, causing it to crash down on top of Edge and Foley's faces. The ECW team then isolate Foley and double team him, ending with Foley now getting thrown into the same barbed wire board while being serenaded by "We Want Fire" chants from the Hammerstein crowd. Foley's arms are bleeding, Edge's head split open, and after having the barbed wire board thrown on top of him, Funk is now bleeding pretty badly too. As he crawls out from under the board trying to get rid of the barbs, he's already crying out, "My eye." But Foley's there waiting for him, arm wrapped in barbed wire himself, ready to drive his forearm down onto Terry's face. Foley continues to attack Terry's face with the barbed wire over and over, with Funk now crying out, no Mick, goddamn Mick, my eye, while medics are trying to pull Terry out of the ring to safety. I remember at the time watching this live, feeling like the cameras had just caught something they probably shouldn't have, and seeing how quickly Terry was rushed out of the building, my suspicions were pretty quickly confirmed that something went wrong and Terry needed help. A quiet hush fell over the ECW crowd as they seemingly all forgot about the bloodlust and the need for fire they felt just moments ago. And instead they now directed their attention and their affection towards a legend who may have just unwillingly given a little more of himself than intended on that occasion. Nah, fuck that, they started chanting "We Want Sandman" before Terry was even out of the room. Tommy was now facing 3-on-1 odds as Lita joined in to assist with a leg drop to a barbed wire bat between Tommy's legs as Beulah watched on helplessly from the apron. The "We Want Sandman" chants continued as Foley listened in, cupping his ear to the crowd, only to purposely mishear them as "We Want Socko," which he happily gave them. Mick set up as if ready to attack Tommy with the dreaded crotch shock, only to swerve and grab an unsuspecting Beulah, dragging her over the top rope and into the ring, causing Tommy to jolt up and try to rush to Beulah's defence. He was rewarded for his bravery by taking what seemed to be the new tag finisher, Edge and Foley's Socko Spear combo. How very extreme. Now trapped with nobody to help her, Beulah gets dragged into the middle of the ring by Edge, who holds her for way too long in the already awkward pump handle slam position, much to the encouragement and enjoyment of Lita, while Foley and Edge high-five over the bent over Beulah Eiffel Tower style. Just before Edge could follow through on the slam part of the pump handle, the crowd starts to stir as a bandaged up, seemingly one-eyed Terry Funk makes his way through the crowd with a barbed wire 2x4. So I lied about something going wrong with Terry earlier, but at the time I thought that was the case, and if I felt it, you should too. Terry once said, "I can't make people believe wrestling is real, but I can make them believe I'm real." And honestly, for those few minutes, he had me believing in both. Beulah chases Lita off as Funk makes his way to the ring and starts swinging the barbed wire 2x4 into Foley and Edge, and then, as a thank you to the crowd for their sincere concern about his well-being, he fulfills their earlier request for fire as Beulah helps light the 2x4 up, only for it to be driven into Mick's stomach and back. Foley exits through the ropes to the apron trying to make it to safety while literally still burning, only to be knocked off the apron by another shot from the burning barbed wire 2x4, causing him to be launched off the apron and through the barbed wire board that Tommy had repositioned just moments ago. Foley, still on fire and tangled up in the barbed wire, finally gets doused with fire extinguishers, only to have Terry Funk then sent crashing down on top of him, inadvertently pushing the barbs further into his flesh thanks to Edge. Tommy then catches Edge with a brutal barbed wire assisted crossface, only to be broken up by Lita kicking Tommy in the head. With everyone else down, this sets up for an ECW staple and a bit of fan service as Beulah attacks Lita, dragging her to the ground by the hair and doing the obligatory rolling hair pull spot as Joey Styles screams "cat fight" in his usual vocal cord shredding delivery. Tommy then hits Lita with a Death Valley Driver, much to the delight of the ECW crowd, but he and Beulah make the mistake of soaking in the moment a little too long as they hit Tommy's pose side by side. Edge sneaks up behind Tommy, wrapping the barbed wire around his face and uses it to yank Tommy down to the ground. Concerned Beulah is too distracted by Tommy's pain to see her own coming, as Edge drives through her with a spear and folds her in half with what we'll just call the Rhea Ripley pin on steroids. And with that, the match is over. Edge helps Lita out of the ring and Foley out of the barbed wire board, which you can still see trying to pull him back in, leaving Terry stuck by himself, twitching, bleeding, and calling for refs to get wire cutters to cut him out. Tommy eventually lifts up Beulah before making his way out to a finally barb-free Funk, as the shots fade to black with our 3 ECW originals still standing even after all they've just been through. People have comfort shows, comfort movies, and I'm sure for wrestling fans, comfort matches. This is my ultimate comfort match. And I know it's a pretty uncomfortable match for a comfort match, and maybe that says a lot more about me than I'd care to admit, but for some reason I've watched this match probably more than any other match in existence. I know it's not Mick Foley's most spectacular stunt, it's not Terry Funk's bloodiest brawl, it's not Edge's most dramatic endeavour, and the women for the most part are just bit players in this match. Beulah was already long retired from any kind of full-time involvement by this point, but Lita was still an active wrestler who could have been utilised better for sure. Oh yeah, and Tommy was still there. All of that aside, this match never gets boring to me. Maybe it's because Terry, Mick, Edge and Lita are 4 of my all-time favourite performers. Maybe it's the novelty of seeing a heel Mick Foley for the first time in a long time. Maybe it's because I love hardcore wrestling, and this is one of the closest things you will ever get to a deathmatch under the WWE umbrella. Or maybe it's because this is probably the last really authentically ECW feeling moment we get from the brand, or maybe it's a combination of all of the above. Wrestling is so good because there's something for everyone. If you like technical proficiency and athleticism, it's there. If you like cartoonish characters and spectacle, it's there too. I think the reason I love this match so much is because of how much reality is in it. And I know a 60-year-old man swinging a ladder around his neck and people voluntarily walking into it is not realistic. I'm not saying this is a picture-perfect real fight simulation, it's still wrestling after all. What I love about it is how well real moments and feelings are weaved into the unreality of wrestling. The ECW fans really did hate the idea of the overly produced and mainstream WWE, and they directed that hate at Edge and Lita. Some fans really did feel like Foley sold out, so they directed that at him, and Foley really did feel in some ways betrayed and hurt by that response, so he then directed it back to the crowd. And the crowd really did love Beulah, so when she was in danger they felt genuine concern for her as a retired non-wrestler in the ring with 3 active competitors. And Terry sure as hell made me believe in him for a few minutes. I thought his injury was real, and Tommy was still there. All of these individual elements combined perfectly and made the end result greater than any of its individual parts for me. And because of that, in my opinion, it's a bit of a hidden gem. Or at least as hidden as any gem from the biggest wrestling company in the world really can be. I watched it again while writing this up, and honestly, I'm probably going to watch it again later too, so I can give it my full attention for what has to be like the 100th time. And I hope you check it out too. If you do, let me know what you thought of it, and let me know what you thought of this video. This is hopefully the first in what I plan to be a series of videos, so who knows. The format might change a little, but let me know what you thought. Too much backstory? Not enough? Something else? Whatever it is, I'm open to feedback and discussion. There's a lot to enjoy in wrestling, and sometimes I think people get exhausted by not enjoying the current booking or story directions that they forget that there's so much wrestling out there that if you're not enjoying one product, there almost certainly is or was something out there that will scratch your itch. So that's what I'm here to do. Enjoy wrestling and share the wrestling I find cool. Hope you enjoy wrestling too. Have a good one.